Welcome to the City Serve Leadership Podcast. My guest today is Kent Doehne, and he's been a friend for a long time. We've been in ministry for a long time, and we have something really special in common, and that is we have both been through the succession process. And I thought we'd spend today talking a little bit about how succession works, what's worked for Kent especially, and then I could maybe throw in a few of my experiences as well. But I just think this is a really invaluable conversation that most people won't have until they probably need to do it.
Right.
And so I think it's going to be really helpful. So Kent, maybe you could talk just a little bit about your journey along the way, because how did you get into ministry? What process did that take for you? And where we ended up when succession became a topic.
Okay. In 1976, I started a 4-year electrical apprenticeship program. And just when I finished that, the church leaders came and said that the youth pastor at our church was going to go up and do an associate role, and they wanted me to come on as the youth pastor. And I kind of laughed. And
you just jumped at it.
You know, I thought that's kind of out of the blue, you know. And so I talked to my wife, and at that time she said, I have no desire to be in the ministry. I'm married electrician, that's what I want to stay. And so as we talked about it, and as the next few months unfolded, we just really felt like it was what God wanted. So we came on staff here at Columbia Heights Assembly.
What year was that?
That was 1980.
Whoa.
We had a prophetic guy that came a few months before, when this was all in consideration, and he prophesied over my wife and I that we would be moving into a new subdivision. We would be able to control who moves in and out through prayer. We would be leaders in that subdivision. God was going to use us in a great way. And he said, you don't have to worry about laying your head down on your pillow at night. God has got you covered in safety. And then kind of the last thing he said was, anyway, God's got to move for you within the next 18 months. So we took that as a positive sign. Well, 3 days later, somebody broke into our house and stole our stereo.
Oh, wow.
So we went ahead, and this process took another 18 or so months. But anyway, and we went ahead and stepped into ministry. And one time, a few years later, I went back and listened to that tape. And everything he said, if you applied it to the spiritual and leadership, it was right on. When I looked at or listened to this tape, he said at the end, anyway, God's got to move for you within 18 months. And it was 18 months to the day that I came on as youth pastor.
Wow.
I was youth pastor from 1980 to 92. I did it for 12 years. And then I was associate for another 12 years. Then in 2004, I became lead pastor. And then it was the September of 2017 that I stepped aside, and Pastor Josh McCann took over as our head pastor. So one of the things that was going on with me about 2015, late 2015, early 2016, I began to just feel a lack of passion for that position.
Yeah.
And it just began to...
Did you tell anyone?
Well, no, I didn't. And I met a guy, and he was a life coach, and he said, well, I said, I just don't really want to spend the money to have a life coach. He goes, well, let me just talk with you a couple times. And so I was telling him about how I was feeling, and that, you know, we had a young pastor, Josh McCann. He was a youth pastor, but he just stepped out of that for a couple of years. And he was the associate, and you know, that it would be a great transition. And he kind of looked at me and said, it sounds like you've answered your own question as we talked. In other words, and so at that time I decided to, so I went to Pastor Josh and the elders and began to lay out, you know, what I was feeling and where I wanted to go. And we actually had...
Did you have a time frame for that in mind?
Yes.
When you came out of that decision and said, I think this is what I'm supposed to do, did you kind of or was that because you had a consultant that kind of helped you through this process?
Yeah.
Was that input from that consultant, or did that something you came up with?
Well, when I first approached it, I knew that Josh, who's just doing a great job as lead pastor the last 5 years here, but he had just stepped out of youth ministry. I knew he needed some more time
Right.
before, and so we actually came up with a 2.5-year plan. And it was during that time that we got the life coach, and he helped develop that plan with us. The plan basically was that we would go for 1 year just with this in the background. We told the elders, of course, and key people in the church had been here a long time. And we just asked everybody to keep it quiet. And, I thought, that isn't going to happen. But, and then I thought any day I was going to see it on Facebook or, somewhere on social media. But we actually were able to work for a whole year without.
Behind the scenes.
Yes.
Yeah. From your standpoint, when you entered into this process and you came out of that meeting the first time with the elders after you told them what you thought you were supposed to do, how did you feel right after that?
Well, I think there was a sense of relief that I had at least voiced that, and we'd gotten it out with the leadership. I'd already talked to Josh because I needed to know how he felt about it.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a sense of relief that now we got a plan, now we're moving forward.
But not like, oh no, what did I just do?
No, I never felt that. I knew it was right. I think as I was going through this process, I've also seen pastors that stay too long.
Yeah.
And their time is up, but they won't let go and step aside. And I felt like that our congregation was aging and we needed youth. And I mean, since then, so many young couples have came. It's just been incredible.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of those factors of just feeling like my tenure was up 17 years is enough. Well, it wasn't 17 years. It was 2004 to 2017, so that's 13 years. But
13 years senior pastor.
yeah, so I just felt like it was time that somebody else needed to be in that position. So.
Well, for an electrician who wasn't sure whether he actually wanted to do ministry,
I know.
you ended up with a long run,
Yes,
and you went through.
Incredible.
You were youth pastor, associate pastor.
Kids ministry for a while.
Yeah.
Men's ministry.
So you basically
finances,
did everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And that's what you brought to the table for Josh too. I mean, you weren't just a
Yeah.
senior pastor who got hired here.
Yeah.
You had really come up through the ranks, and you knew the church, you knew the people really, really well.
Yeah. And I had a kind of like two motivations or two driving things. I wanted to finish strong.
Yeah.
And I wanted to set Josh up for success.
Yeah.
So
what did you do specifically to accomplish that?
well, and some of this was I got a transition coach. He was from Boston, and I met with him a couple times a month on the phone. And he began to help me with certain things. Setting a timeline is one of them.
Yeah.
And having stages of benchmarks you want to get to here and here. And we did things like, for the first year, of course, it was kept quiet. And then when we announced it, we then had, for the last 6 months, Josh was preaching 3 times and me once.
3 times a month?
Yeah. So the voice of the church, before he stepped in, was really, my voice was, took a back seat. So he was really the voice of the church when he stepped in.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do things like that, get him, again, involved in other aspects of the church so he knows the nuts and bolts.
How did you encourage Josh in his relationship with the elders in particular? What did you encourage him to do?
Well, I think that one of the things that we talked about that I think was a better relationship with me out is that while I was the senior pastor, Josh was the youth pastor. So he would often come into me, and he was young in ministry at that time. So he was coming off at my office a lot of times with questions, and he's an ideas guy.
Yeah.
And he's always thinking and always coming up with some really good plans. And so he would come in and with the youth ministry, I do this, I want to make these changes. And I'd say, okay, what do you got to give up? I'd kind of poke some holes in it just to get him to consider and kind of help him work through those things, not try to get him to not do them, but do them so they'd be a success. And I think after the transition, I could do that with the elders. If he came in with an idea and talked to me, I could say, okay, here's what these guys are going to ask you.
Yeah.
Here's what these guys are going to want to know. If you need to be prepared. So I think I could help him to be able to go in with the elders, and they're all great guys, so it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
But I think I helped him more outside of it than being in it, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
one of the things I encouraged Kevin and Nina Salinas to do at Evangel was to develop real friendships with those guys.
Yeah, that's good.
Because three of them had been there since the start of the church, 30 years or 30 plus years. And so that's what I felt my position was, to encourage those relationships and try to help them grow. And then kind of disconnect my relationship a little bit. I tried to do I was part of the elders group for a short period of time, but I found that every time I turned around, whenever somebody would ask a question, the heads would turn towards me.
Yes, and
instead of Kevin and Nina, and I'm like, this is really counterproductive.
It doesn't work, does it?
No, it doesn't. And it's not like I wanted to say anything. In fact, one of the hardest parts of succession for me is because I'm still part of Evangel, which is like you, is keeping my mouth shut.
Yes.
Because I'm so used to being a vocal part of the church in every way. It's just been really challenging to keep my mouth shut for this last year.
Well, and staying at the church is very unusual.
Yeah.
Because most times when a senior pastor steps aside, he's got to even leave town, cut off contact with the people so that the new guy can win their heart and approval. And so for me, one of the things that I think I kept this promise I made myself, is that I would always be supportive of him.
Right.
Because somebody in the congregation, every once in a while somebody comes up and says, why don't we have a flag in the church anymore? That's a big deal. We used to have a Christian flag and a United States, U.S. flag. And when we remodeled the church, we took that out, and people come up with questions like that, and I'm supportive and say, why do we have to have a, even if I wanted it, I would try to defend the eldership and Josh, because it would be death if I criticized him.
And it's not hard to support your son-in-law who's the pastor.
Not.
That's a pretty easy thing to do. The hard part is, I think, one of the hard parts is there are flat out times when you just wouldn't have done things the way he did it. And you have to let him do it and learn from that and support him through the process. Not that there are a lot of it, and it's not big things, but it's just personal things that you would do a certain way that he does a different way.
Yeah.
So how has it affected, because this is a very rare situation where you're actually in a family relationship. How's it affected your relationship with Josh personally?
I don't think it's affected at all. We're close, and family. There's a family tie and a pastoral. He's my pastor, so I don't think it's affected us. I think it's actually been very healthy.
It seems like it would make it better.
I think it is.
Because I have son-in-laws who I don't have that kind of relationship with. And I think, what would it be like to walk with your son-in-law that way?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It is pretty cool. Yeah. One of the things I would tell anybody is get outside help. Like some kind of a life coach, some kind of a person that can give you some input. Read some books.
Yeah. So you're getting some feedback.
Yeah. So you're not just trying to go through a transition without really ever experiencing it. You're just kind of thinking this is a good idea.
Right.
But maybe it's not, because I can't remember specifics, but I can remember with the life coach, I would say stuff and he goes, "Do you really want to do that?" And then
it's really helpful.
We'd be able to talk about it, and I would begin to say, yeah, that's not a good idea.
Well, don't you think too that you obviously Columbia Heights is a church family to you at first, you know, like maybe more than the congregation, it's a church family, and so and you're a father of that family, and entrusting the family but now you're still part of the family.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's I am so glad I'm still at Evangel, because I gained so much from being part of the family that I loved for 30 years.
Yes.
And I didn't have to give that up. I can't imagine walking away from it all completely. I mean, I can walk.
It would have been brutal.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
can imagine walking away from some of the things. I mean, it's almost immediately when when we made the transition, which is a little over a year ago, I felt the weight lift off.
Yeah.
And it was significant.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I felt so much weight that I didn't realize I was carrying.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the job description, it wasn't the duties, but it was the weight of relationship with people that you carry as a senior pastor. I don't think anybody gets it until they do it. And even associate pastors don't carry that kind of weight.
Yeah, that's true.
But
That's very true.
it's kind of a relief.
Yeah, it is. What I was able to do, the church gave us a 3-month sabbatical, paid sabbatical, which was very nice. And it took me probably 3 or 4 weeks. That thing lifted, but it just took some time but it felt good.
What has your wife noticed about you since you
I
stepped down as senior pastor?
I don't know. I think there's a lot less. I mean, when you're in the senior role, Sunday comes every week, so you got to have a sermon be prepared, plus all the other activities, all the other meetings. It's been a relief to just kind of be out from under all that, and have more time at home, more I think it's been a good for both of us. Yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
That just to be able to sit down, when I thought about getting together with you and talking about whatever we want to talk about, which I knew would be something to do with succession, I just thought, what a privilege, because it doesn't happen very often that the guys who go through succession are still around to talk about it.
Yeah, it's true, because they got to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think that, in fact, some of the books we read and some of the stuff that we have talked about, that you should prepare right now for a successor.
Yeah.
What would your church do now if your senior pastor got so sick he couldn't, do the job, or if he died? What would you do? Who would be the person that would rise up and take leadership? And is there that person in the church? So I think those things are things that I don't think the church ever used to think about.
I never thought about it.
And then somebody dies, and where is the church? So I think these are all really important positions to have. And like you, I had a person on staff in the church that was capable to step in. And so it made it something that was possible to do. So,
well, Kent, well done.
Thank you.
You did a great job. I don't know if you hear that very often from people outside of Columbia Heights Assembly, but you did a great job at this. You should feel really good, and I feel really good that I'm walking with a guy who is so considerate and kind and gentle and loving in the way that he transitions. So thank you.
Well, thank you for saying that. So.
We really hope today's episode was helpful. You'll find more resources and content to connect with other community leaders by going to our website, cityservecowlitz.org. So, it's been a joy to walk with you, and we'll see you.